There comes a moment when everything you built begins to crumble, when the ground beneath your feet dissolves and you stand alone in a silence so vast it echoes through your bones. This is not abandonment. This is the final test of faith before the universe opens its hands and offers you everything you ever truly needed. But first, it must know if you can hold it. What happens when all external validation disappears? When the signs stop coming? When the doors remain closed? When even your prayers seem to vanish into a void that returns nothing but your own breath? The universe is not punishing you. It is watching to see if you have found something within yourself that no loss, no delay, no darkness can extinguish. This test arrives disguised as devastation because only devastation can reveal what remains when everything false has been stripped away. This journey into the final proving ground will show you why the silence before transformation is not empty, why the universe withholds until you stop reaching with desperate hands, and how the very moment you think you have failed is often the precise instant you have passed. The wisdom lies not in the arrival of what you seek, but in who you become while waiting in the dark. You stand in the desert of your own becoming. The oasis you saw on the horizon has vanished. Your throat is dry with unanswered questions. Every step forward feels like sinking deeper into sand that offers no foothold, no certainty, no proof that you are moving in the right direction. This is the geography of the final test. It is designed to feel like abandonment because the universe is not interested in your faith when evidence surrounds you. It wants to know what you carry when all evidence suggests you carry nothing. Carl Jung understood this threshold. He spoke of the dark night of the soul not as punishment, but as initiation. The psyche, he observed, must descend into its own underworld before it can claim its crown. You are not being tested on your ability to maintain hope when hope is easy. You are being tested on your capacity to hold your center when the center itself seems to dissolve. Can you remain faithful to your essence when every external mirror reflects back only absence? The illusion whispers that you have been forgotten, that your prayers fell on deaf ears, that the universe moved on without you. But what if the opposite is true? What if the universe has never been more attentive, more present, more invested in your transformation than in this exact moment when you feel most alone? The test is this. Can you sustain your own light when no other light confirms it? Can you be the sun that rises in your own darkness? Consider the seed buried in earth. It knows nothing of spring. It has no evidence of flowers. Surrounded by soil and stone, it might believe itself abandoned to permanent night. Yet something within it continues. Not because it has proof of what will come, but because continuation is its nature. You are that seed. The darkness around you is not your tomb. It is the fertile ground of your becoming. But here is where the test grows sharper. The universe does not only remove external support, it also removes the timeline. It takes away your sense of when relief will come, when the door will open, when the silence will break. This is deliberate. Because as long as you are negotiating with time, as long as your faith is conditional on a deadline, you have not yet surrendered to the deeper current. True faith is not belief that something will happen eventually. It is the capacity to be whole right now, even if nothing ever changes. Jung called this the tension of opposites. You must hold desire without desperation. You must want deeply while being complete in your wanting. The universe observes this paradox within you. It watches to see if you can embody both longing and peace, both vision and surrender, both movement and stillness. The moment you collapse into only one side of the equation, either frantic grasping or numb resignation, the test continues. You must be able to walk the narrow bridge between them. Why does the test come disguised as loss? Because loss is the great revealer. When you lose the job, the relationship, the dream you built your identity around, what remains? If your sense of self was constructed entirely from external achievements, external validations, external recognitions, then loss becomes annihilation. But if something deeper lives within you, something that existed before any achievement and will exist after all achievements fade, then loss becomes liberation. The universe strips away what you thought you were so you can discover what you actually are. There is a specific kind of suffering Jung identified in those who live perpetually on the edge of realization. He might have called it the Tantalus complex after the mythological figure cursed to stand in water that recedes when he bends to drink, beneath fruit that rises when he reaches to eat. These are souls who organize their entire psychic structure around almost having, almost arriving, almost breaking through. But they never do. Not because the universe withholds, but because some unconscious part of them is addicted to the hunger itself. Do you know this pattern in yourself? The way you get close to what you want, close enough to taste it, and then something inside you sabotages? The opportunity slips through your fingers. You make the small mistake that costs everything. You choose the safe option at the final hour. Jung would say this is not bad luck. This is your psyche protecting you from a terror greater than deprivation. The terror of actually having what you want and discovering who you would need to become to sustain it. As long as you do not have, you can remain hidden. You can tell yourself that once you achieve, once you receive, once you arrive, then you will be ready to step fully into your power. But the truth Jung illuminated is that the waiting itself becomes identity. The lack becomes the known territory, and the unknown territory, the one where you are abundant, visible, successful, loved, is so foreign that your psyche recoils from it as if from a cliff edge. Better to stay hungry. At least hunger is familiar. What are you more afraid of? Not receiving what you long for, or receiving it and having to meet the full weight of your own potential? This is the question the universe asks in silence. Because if you are still using lack as a shield against responsibility, if you are still hiding in the story of not being ready, not being worthy, not being chosen, then abundance would destroy you. Not because abundance is dangerous, but because you have not yet built the inner structure to hold it. Jung spoke of the shadow. The shadow is not only what you reject in yourself, but also what you cannot yet own. For many, their power is in their shadow, their brilliance is in their shadow. Their capacity for joy, for ease, for receiving without guilt is locked in the shadow because somewhere along the way they learned that wanting makes you vulnerable, that having makes you a target, that shining makes you unsafe. So they stay small, they stay hungry, they keep failing at the final hour, and they call it fate. But fate is not failure. Fate is the insistence of your soul to become what it came here to be. And if your soul knows you are still hiding, still performing lack as a form of self-protection, it will keep withholding the breakthrough until you are ready to stand in full light without apologizing for the brightness. This is not cruelty. This is precision. The universe does not give you what you want until you can hold it without losing yourself. The final test asks you to want without begging, to desire without collapsing into energetic desperation. There is a frequency of longing that is clean, clear, magnetic. It does not plead. It does not perform worthiness. It simply states its truth and then rests in itself. This is not detachment born of bitterness. This is not pretending you do not care as a manipulation tactic. This is the genuine capacity to hold your desire lightly, as something you welcome but do not require to be whole. Jung called this active surrender. It is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is the recognition that your role is not to force open every door, but to become the person who naturally walks through open doors because their internal state matches the frequency of the space beyond. You do not fight the river. You become the current. You do not demand entry. You dissolve the barrier by no longer vibrating as separate from what you seek. But here is the shadow side of spiritual seeking that often goes unexamined. There is a kind of ego that wears detachment as costume. It says the right words, performs the right rituals, and mimics surrender while internally still white-knuckling control. This is the ego that tries to trick the universe. It believes if it can just appear unattached enough, the universe will reward its performance with manifestation. But the universe does not respond to theater. It responds to truth, and truth can be felt, not performed. So the test includes this. Can you be honest about your hunger? Can you acknowledge your desire without shame, even as you release the demand that it arrive on your schedule in your preferred form through your expected channel? This is the narrow gate. Most people swing between two extremes, either gripping so tightly they strangle possibility or pretending not to care as a defense mechanism. Neither is surrender. Neither is faith. Both are fear wearing different masks. Real surrender feels like a paradox. You care deeply and you release completely. You hold vision clearly and you trust the path to be revealed step by step. You know what you want and you remain open to receiving something even better than what you imagined. This is the vibration the universe recognizes. This is the frequency that dissolves blocks. Not because you finally learned the right technique, but because you stopped performing and started being. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are by removing everything you are not. It is not comfortable. It is not quick. It is alchemical, which means it requires heat, pressure, dissolution, and reconstitution. The final test before you receive everything is the fire that burns away every false identity, every borrowed belief, every mask you wore to survive a world that asks you to be smaller than your soul could tolerate. What remains after that fire is the gold, but you must be willing to burn. Why does the universe not hand abundance to an inflated ego? Because an inflated ego cannot hold abundance without becoming toxic. If you are still seeking external validation to fill an internal void, still chasing achievements to prove you are worthy of love, still building an image to compensate for feeling invisible, then success becomes poison. It will isolate you, distort you, disconnect you from your essence. The universe withholds not to punish, but to protect. It waits until your center of gravity shifts from the conditioned self to the authentic self. The self, in Jung's understanding, is not the personality. It is not the ego. It is the totality of who you are, the essence that existed before socialization, trauma, and adaptation shaped your surface. The self is the part of you that is timeless, unchanging, connected to something larger than personal survival. When you live from the self, abundance is no longer a goal to achieve. It becomes a natural byproduct of alignment. You stop chasing. You start magnetizing. But to reach the self, you must pass through a symbolic death. You must allow the version of yourself that believed it needed external validation to dissolve. You must release the identity built on achievement, on comparison, on proving. You must sit in the void between who you were and who you are becoming long enough to know that the void is not empty. It is full of potential. It is the womb of your rebirth, and it is terrifying. This is why so many people turn back at the threshold. They reach the edge of transformation and panic. They cling to the old identity even though it no longer fits, even though it causes suffering, because at least it is known. The unknown, even if it promises freedom, feels like annihilation to the part of you that has spent a lifetime constructing defenses against vulnerability. So you stay in the familiar pain. You keep almost arriving. You maintain the hunger. And you wonder why the door never fully opens. The door is open. It has always been open. But you cannot walk through it carrying the weight of who you used to be. You cannot enter the new life while dragging the old story behind you. The test is whether you are willing to let the old story die without knowing exactly what will replace it. whether you can trust the void enough to surrender into it fully without guarantees, without proof, without a map of what comes next. Jung spoke of this as the nigredo, the blackening, the first stage of alchemical transformation. It is the descent into darkness, the dissolution of form, the moment when everything you thought was solid reveals itself as temporary. It feels like death because it is death. But it is not the death of you. It is the death of the false you, the constructed you, the you that was designed to survive but never truly live. What emerges from the nigredo is essence. What rises from the ashes is the phoenix that always existed beneath the disguise. During this time, you may feel abandoned. You may feel as though your prayers go unheard, as though the universe has turned its back, as though you are walking through a dark forest alone with no sign of dawn. This is the sacred loneliness of individuation. No one can walk this path for you. No one can shortcut the process. No one can rescue you from the necessary discomfort of becoming. You must be alone with yourself long enough to remember that you are never truly alone. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is the chamber where transformation happens. It is where you meet the parts of yourself you have been avoiding, where you confront the wounds you have been running from, where you integrate the shadow you have been projecting onto others. Jung believed that without this confrontation, without this integration, you remain fragmented. And a fragmented self cannot hold wholeness. It cannot sustain the weight of real abundance. It will leak, sabotage, collapse under pressure. So the universe does not rush you. It allows you to sit in the solitude until the solitude no longer feels like punishment. Until it becomes sanctuary. Until you discover that the only approval you ever needed was your own, that the only validation that matters is your internal knowing, that the only home you were searching for exists within your own being. When you arrive at that realization, not as concept but as lived experience, everything shifts. Not because the external world changes, but because you are no longer dependent on it to define your worth. The signs you have been waiting for are already here. But they do not arrive in the language you expect. The universe does not send emails. It does not text. It does not speak in the literal, linear way the rational mind demands. It communicates through synchronicity, through dreams, through the sudden appearance of a person who says exactly what you needed to hear, through the book that falls open to the precise page you needed to read, through the bird that lands on your windowsill the morning you considered giving up. These are not coincidences, these are conversations. But you must learn the language. You must quiet the noise of your own desperation long enough to hear the whispers beneath it. You must stop demanding that guidance arrive in neon signs and start noticing the subtle currents that move beneath the surface of ordinary life. The universe is always speaking. The question is whether you have developed the sensitivity to listen. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the door stays closed. Sometimes the path you wanted dissolves and you are left standing in fog with no sense of direction. And in those moments, the test is not whether you can maintain blind faith. The test is whether you can trust that the no is also guidance, that the closed door is also protection, that the fog is also concealment of something being prepared behind the veil that you are not yet ready to see. Jung recognized that the psyche has its own timing. It does not conform to your calendar, your ambitions, your 5-year plan. It moves in spirals, in cycles, in rhythms that honor a deeper intelligence than the linear mind can comprehend. When you try to force breakthrough before the psyche is ready, you create crisis. When you surrender to the timing, even when you do not understand it, you align with a flow that carries you further than your own effort ever could. This requires profound humility. It requires admitting that you do not always know what is best for you, that your conscious desires may be misaligned with your soul's deeper purpose, that what you think you want may be a distraction from what you truly need. The final test is whether you can release the grip on your own plan and trust that something wiser is orchestrating the unfolding. Even when the unfolding looks nothing like what you imagined, there is a difference between resignation and conscious surrender. Resignation is giving up with resentment, with bitterness, with the belief that you have been defeated. Conscious surrender is giving over with trust, with curiosity, with the recognition that your limited perspective cannot see the full pattern. Resignation closes you. Surrender opens you. Resignation makes you small. Surrender makes you spacious enough to receive what is coming. The universe is not cruel, but it is precise. It will not give you what you want as long as what you want is being used to fill a hole, to fix a wound, to prove something to someone who will never see you the way you long to be seen. It waits until you stop using desire as compensation for lack and start experiencing desire as expression of fullness. It waits until you want from overflow, not from depletion. It waits until receiving becomes natural, not miraculous. And then, without announcement, without fanfare, something shifts. You do not notice it happening. There is no certificate, no cosmic email confirming that you have passed the test. You simply realize one day that you are no longer waiting. You are no longer desperate. You are no longer scanning the horizon for evidence of movement. You have become still. You have become present. You have become at peace with exactly where you are, even as you remain open to where you are going. And in that stillness, everything changes. This is the invisible turning point. You pass the final test not when you finally receive what you wanted, but when you stop needing it to feel whole. You pass when you can hold desire without desperation, vision without attachment, hope without demand. You pass when your internal state no longer fluctuates based on external conditions, when your sense of self is no longer negotiable, when your peace is no longer conditional. And the paradox is this: the moment you become whole without needing anything to complete you, the universe pours. Not because you performed the right ritual, said the right affirmation, visualized with enough intensity, but because you finally became the frequency match for what you were calling in. You stopped vibrating as lack. You started vibrating as completeness. And completeness does not repel abundance. It magnetizes it. Jung understood that the psyche seeks balance. If you are internally impoverished, you will unconsciously reject external wealth because it would create too much dissonance. But if you cultivate internal richness, if you tend the garden of your own being until it blooms with self-knowledge, self-compassion, self-sufficiency, then external abundance becomes natural extension, not foreign invasion. You can receive it because you already are it. You can hold it because you are not gripping. You can enjoy it because you are not afraid of losing it. The final test is ultimately this: can you love yourself enough to stop betraying yourself? Can you honor your truth enough to stop abandoning it for approval? Can you trust your path enough to stop comparing it to others? Can you value your timing enough to stop rushing toward a future that has not yet arrived? Can you be here now fully without the constant mental escape into when things will be better, different, more? Because presence is the portal. Not presence as a meditation technique you perform for 10 minutes in the morning. Presence as a way of being, a way of moving through the world, a way of meeting each moment as if it matters because it does. When you stop living in the gap between where you are and where you think you should be, the gap closes. Not because circumstances change, but because you are no longer creating the gap with your own resistance. The universe does not respond to your words. It responds to your vibration. And your vibration is not what you say you believe. It is what you embody in every cell, in every breath, in every choice you make when no one is watching. If you say you trust but your actions scream control, the universe reads the actions. If you claim to have faith but your energy radiates fear, The universe feels the fear. You cannot trick the cosmic mirror. It reflects what you are, not what you pretend to be. So the work is internal. It has always been internal. The final test is not about proving yourself to the universe. It is about becoming so aligned with your own essence that the universe recognizes you as one of its own, as a being who has remembered their true nature, as a consciousness that no longer needs to be taught through suffering because it has learned through integration. When you reach that state, the lessons stop, the struggles stop. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you have become unshakable. What does unshakable mean? It does not mean you never feel fear, never doubt, never falter. It means that beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the faltering, there is a foundation that does not crack. There is a knowing that cannot be argued away. There is a trust that does not require evidence. You have built yourself on bedrock instead of sand. And when storms come, and they will come, you bend, but you do not break. You weather, but you do not erode. You remain. This is the gift on the other side of the final test, not the external abundance, though that may come. Not the achievement, though that may arrive. The real gift is you, the version of you that survived the fire and came out tempered, clear, true. The version of you that no longer needs permission, validation, or applause to know their worth. The version of you that can stand alone in a room full of people and feel complete, or stand alone in actual solitude and feel held by something larger than loneliness. You are being prepared. Every moment of silence, every unanswered question, every closed door, every delay, every disappointment is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of refinement. You are being carved into the shape that can hold what is coming. You are being emptied of what is false, so there is room for what is true. You are being broken open so your light can finally escape the shell you built around it for protection that became a prison. The universe is not testing you to see if you are good enough. You were always good enough. It is testing you to see if you know you are good enough. If you have internalized your worth so deeply that no external circumstance can shake it. If you have claimed your belonging to life so fully that you no longer beg for scraps of recognition. When you pass that test, when you embody that knowing, everything you need finds you, not because you finally earned it, but because you finally allowed it. And here is the final truth. You have already passed. You passed the moment you stopped looking for the exit and started inhabiting the present. You passed the moment you chose to keep going even when everything in you wanted to quit. You passed the moment you decided that your faith was not dependent on outcomes, that your peace was not negotiable, that your essence was not for sale. The universe saw that. It has been preparing your reward, not as payment for suffering, but as recognition of transformation. Now it is only a matter of time before the external reality catches up to the internal shift you have already made. And time, as Jung knew, is not linear. It is spiral. It is layered. It is full of doorways that open when you are ready to walk through them, not when you demand they appear. So breathe, rest, trust. You are closer than you think. The silence is not emptiness. It is the pause before the symphony begins. And you, beloved, are ready to hear the music. If this resonated with you, if you felt seen in these words, I invite you to subscribe and continue this journey with me. Share in the comments what part of this message landed deepest for you. Your reflection might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. We are walking this path together, and your presence here matters more than you know.